Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to InsurTech Amplified. We are joined today by Josh Hart, a co-founder and the Chief Product and Technology Officer at YuLife. Josh, thank you so much for coming to the show. I feel like we've had like an hour-long conversation before we started recording. Anyway, it's great to have you here. Let's give the listeners a little bit of your background just to get some context.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me here. So for those who want to know a little bit about me, my name is Josh Hart. I was born in London, and I've been building businesses since I left school. YuLife, I started 8 years ago with some amazing co-founders, and we built the newest insurance business in the UK, and we've been growing insanely fast. We've got 1 million members. We protect people. We engage them with incentive-based programs to become healthier, happier, holistically, a more purposeful and achievement-centric self, and we insure them. So, that's us.
Can I ask you this though? When you first started, was the idea to gamify the insurance industry, or was it something that you guys kind of came upon as you were going around trying to grow this company? Do you know what I mean? Like, was that the original idea when I think there are 5 co-founders, yeah?
Yeah.
So in the 5 you were sitting around, you're like, we have to gamify this thing? Or was it like, we just have to make insurance better? And then you think, what's the best way to do this? And this kind of came up.
Yeah, I think so it's a really good question. When we started, it wasn't like the 5 of us were sitting in a room. There was Sammy Rubin, who's the CEO. He was the founding CEO of Vitality Life in the UK. So he'd already had this idea and this experience of a well-being centric insurance proposition. And he built that business, and it was terribly successful even now. And he understood this opportunity of technology combining with insurance, combining with well-being, which was his mission around wellness. So Sammy was like coming at this from a real wellness perspective, but also with a tech edge. And then he meets a guy called Sam Frompson, who's like 26. He's a rabbi. He's on his 3rd kid or 2nd kid at the time. His wife was doing a PhD. He'd been working in a hedge fund. This guy was like mass overachiever. He turns up and meets Sammy, wandering the wilderness of creativity, and says, Sammy tells him about his idea to bring this kind of tech well-being thing together and insurance, all this trifecta, into one new business. And Sam kind of goes, great, we're going to make this happen. And then Sam, as he is a bit of an engine room, starts trying to write a business case that evening. They meet a few people, they meet a reinsurer, and they very quickly realize that to raise capital, they need to have a technical co-founder, which is when they met me. And Sam, I think, put on Facebook, and an old flatmate of mine replied to the Facebook post, says, I think I might have someone, called me and said, Josh, would you do me a favor? I've got this rabbis, they've got an idea for an app. Could you go meet them?
But were you building apps at that time?
Yeah, so when I left school at 17, I basically found a niche. When I was about 19, I kind of did software building. But when I was about 19, the iPhone had come out and the iPad was just about to be launched. And I had been noticing this enormous wave of requirements coming in from America specifically of people wanting apps. And what had happened was that everyone's CEO's niece, nephew had built an app in their bedroom. And then the companies, big Fortune 500 companies, that app would have been built by a kid in their bedroom and then just published. And this was the case for most of the market. And in 2020, the iPad comes out. No, not 2010. 2010. God, time flies. 2010, the iPad comes out.
I almost said yes, and I'm like, no, that can't be. It was 2010. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly, everyone goes, oh my gosh, there's this iPad. Well, we could use this in the work context. And in the pharmaceutical industry at the time, people were putting in the back of their cars lots and lots of paperwork to provide to doctors across America.
Yeah.
So the fact that an iPad is out there means that, oh my gosh, you don't have to walk around with all these pieces of paper. You can just have it on your iPad and then email it to someone if you wanted to. So that was quite a big moment. And I had this company called Chelsea Apps Factory, and we were building apps out of London. And it grew. 6 years was very, very, not even 5.5 years. It grew from like 3 of us to 120 people. So I ended up building apps for people like Google, for people like Standard Life, from GlaxoSmithKline and Waitrose, which is a supermarket in the UK, loads of big high street brands. I would build their apps. And one day I woke up and I was no longer motivated. I think I'd just been surviving. I got kicked out of school, and then I'd just been trying to like be a success. And it got to the point where I no longer was enjoying what I was doing. And the reason I wasn't enjoying it is I realized I had this revelation. I think I was working with a very big pension firm, and I built this amazing piece of technology that was an app that was similar to Farmville, an old Facebook game, if anyone remembers, where instead of like giving money to the game developer, you'd invest it in your pension. And I built this app, and then they said, this is not in our brand profile. We sell only to brokers and intermediaries. The end customer, it's not really about, our marketing is all about how do we sell to brokers and intermediaries who are an essential part of the ecosystem, but they didn't believe that brokers and intermediaries wanted anything that was sparkly. They just wanted, whatever it was that pension fund had historically been giving. And they canned the project. And I literally stopped enjoying being an arts and crafts teacher for these big corporations. I lost the because that's what it kind of felt like.
Yeah, I'm sure. Can I ask you this though? The first thing I said to you was like, did you guys just sit down and decide that gamification was the right way to do this? I didn't know the Farmville part of this story. And obviously you didn't build Farmville.
No, that'd be nice.
But you must have thought in the back of your mind, if I can build a game that convinces people instead of like getting tokens or whatever it was that Farmville did, right? That I can actually have them take this money and as a prize, they get part of a mutual fund or a hedge fund or whatever it is. And then they get actual real returns.
Yeah.
So you had already been gamifying stuff.
Yeah. So I'm a massive gamer, right? So part of the reason I was kicked out of school, because when everyone was doing homework or studying for exams, I was playing games. And I was playing games that would be totally immersive. And I would log on to my computer when I get home from school, and I'd log off at 1 a.m. And then I'd turn up at school and miss my first form. And that was kind of my routine from the age of 12 to maybe 17. And I do an occasional project to make some pocket money using tech, but it wasn't that wasn't why. So this thing of me enjoying games had always been such a central part of my growing up. When I turned 18, 20, discovering that the grown-up technology that I would have to use, Outlook, email, doing a tax return, paying an electric bill, that from the same machine that had given me so much pleasure, I now got so much pain and boredom and just nothingness.
Yeah. It's just drudgery.
But why?
I used to say, can I say this to you? I used to say when I was in high school, like if they taught history, like and just put it to Led Zeppelin, like everybody would remember it. Because if you can remember the lyrics to like Stairway to Heaven, do you know what I mean? You could remember like who the Archduke Ferdinand was kind of thing. Yeah. If it was just to music. And this is kind of gamification of history in a way, no?
No, I love it. I mean, that's exactly the philosophy is, it's all about context shifting. Everything's remixing existing ideas. My idea at that point had always been simple of like, how do I take this feeling of gaming and apply it to the grown-up world? And because I was doing consulting for 6 years or 5.5 years, I discovered very quickly that the world was not there, right? They didn't understand what I was talking about. So I very quickly shut down that narrative. And then as I got more confident in my business, in my consulting business, I eventually just started doing what I wanted to do. And then getting shut down at the last hurdle because clients would be like, yeah, this isn't what we want. It's too out there. And I found that was quite frustrating. And I was 20, we're talking in 2016 at that time. So I was 26.
Yep.
And it just so happens that I get, so then I sell to my partner, buy a house, still with my girlfriend who I went to school with. She stayed with me even after the high school train wreck. I'm sitting on the sofa playing Battlefield 1 for 3 months. And one day I get this text message being like, oh, can you go see, I'm doing a bit of advisory work for a couple of boards, but like nothing much, a couple of days a month. And then I get this text message saying, oh, could you meet these guys? They've got an idea for an app, this rabbi. And I think, okay, don't really want to do that, but maybe I'll get some points with the man upstairs. Literally. It was not much more thought than that. And then I turn up to this, in Golders Green in London, I turn up to a coffee shop and I meet what looks to be a hippie and a bodybuilder.
Right.
Okay. And I'm like, these are not the black hats that I was expecting.
Right. So Sammy Rubin, I'm presuming, is the hippie and Sam Thompson is the bodybuilder. Just for people who haven't met them.
Yeah. So my co-founders, Sammy and Sam, hippie, and Sam would say he's not a bodybuilder, but nobody.
He's big though.
He's a big boy. Yeah.
I feel pretty fit, but when I stand next to him, I just feel like I'm not working hard enough.
Honestly, I think everybody feels that when in any respect of life. If you've met Sam Thompson, you'll be like, I'm not working hard enough. So I need.
Wait. So this is what I want to know, though, right? So Sam. And they both have the same name at some level, right? But so Fromson is working at a hedge fund.
Yeah.
And must be like a math head. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I worked at Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, right? So I get it. But I mean, he's in the finance world.
Yes.
And he's a serious, hardworking dude. Yeah. And Sammy has already said, you said built Vitality Life, which is a big insurance company.
Yeah.
So then you rock up and you're just a guy who's been in his basement basically for 3 months playing games.
Yeah.
How did this ever work, if you know what I mean?
Well, I think my company from before was quite successful. It was quite big. I was kind of on the come down of not doing that anymore and trying to decide
if you said Chelsea App Factory, people would have known it.
Yes, very much so. There are still people out there that will know it today from corporate world. We advised Google on Google for Works. We were like one of these up and coming mobile development is now commoditized, but at the time it was like a specialist skill set. So it was like, it was a big thing. If you were building an app, we were one of the players that you would be speaking to pretty much anywhere in the world. So it was a good business. But I felt and was at the time quite credible in terms of my ability to create apps that were good.
Yeah.
I also created a lot of apps that weren't good, but clients, what are you going to do?
Fair enough.
So I just knew how to do it with my eyes closed. It was so easy for me at that point. I built hundreds, and I knew what mattered and what didn't matter. Anyway, I'm listening to these guys talking about this vision of building this new insurance business. At this time, I know very little about insurance. I certainly don't know much about life insurance. I still at that point thought Legal & General was a law firm. I mean, I looked at the advert. I thought
it's in the name. It says legal.
Yeah, legal, general law, maybe. So I didn't, I really hadn't engaged with that market. And I realized something that mattered more than an idea, and it mattered more than what I could do. I realized what matters to me next is who I work with.
Yeah.
And not what the product exactly does. And more so, what I wanted to happen was I needed the business that we would create would be a good energy in the world. I just set up casinos for William Hill and Ladbrokes for William Hill at the time in Italy and in Spain. And I'd done a big project with Ladbrokes. And I felt like a bit dirty from the gambling thing. And after taking a break from work, I realized maybe that wasn't the best use of my energy in life. And actually, maybe I was adding more darkness to the world than light. And then I meet these guys and they talk about, being healthier, being happier. They talk about being good energy in the world. They talk about the importance of life insurance. It always pays out when people die, broadly speaking. Yeah. And basically it's a good energy. It's a needed thing in the world. And then I thought, okay, what if I could take all of my magic and apply it to this opportunity? And then my rule, my parameters for working together was like, okay, I want control. I'm a bit of a lunatic, but I want to be able to control what we make. I don't want to have too much interference. I don't want to build a thing before we raise money. I don't want to design anything before we raise money. And the reason I don't want to is because having had clients, I knew the most important thing, which is never let anyone have an opinion. And what happens at that very early stage is that when you start designing something or showing something to an investor, they're now assessing whether they think it's good or not. And honestly, when you hack something together over a weekend, it ain't going to be good. So there's no point. What matters is the mission, the vision, and the team, and the TAM. Great market. So I make my kind of parameters really clear from the outset, and I explain my thing about gaming. I wanted it to be fun.
What did they say?
We could build it, and it would be fun.
But what did they say? The reason why I brought up the Sam Fromson thing is, right, if he's coming out of traditional finance, I did it for years. I mean, it was fun at some level, but it wasn't game fun.
Yeah.
And insurance is not known, at least back then, for its funness. So like when you come in and just go, okay, this has to be gamified and fun, did they just say like, okay, you're out? Or were they like, this is fascinating? Do you know what I mean?
So funnily enough, Sammy immediately was interested. He was more open to it, I think. Sam wasn't open to it at the beginning. He also, I had credibility from Sam's perspective where, because I'd built all these apps and I'd had this track record, and he kind of knew I wasn't a gamble. He knew it was like a sure thing. And when you're looking for co-founders to deliver a particular thing together, you're kind of like, what are your skills that are proven and what's unproven? And my skills in the proven space was, okay, this guy can make an app. Sam, I think at the time hadn't built any apps, right? So he didn't know how hard it is to get engagement with a product. So his priority was like, technically, could it be built, I think? Whereas Sammy was like, I think having done it before, especially in consumer, because he'd been really successful in consumer insurance, he knew that then maybe there's an edge, there's some magic, and this game thing could be a thing. And then for years, Sam Thompson and I have always joked about the importance of gamification versus incentive programs. And he'll be like, oh, if you're paying people to use the thing, of course they're going to use it. And I'm like, mate, the whole internet is trying to pay you to do things, and you don't do most of them.
Right.
So it's like me trying to explain that, and it's been a fun dynamic. But ultimately, what happened then and there was that our relationship, at least the three of us to begin with, was a deep-rooted trust. A trust and a mutual respect for what each of us could bring to the table. I could bring a product and tech. Sam could bring order and rhythm to the business. And Sammy had a fabulous vision and a great soul and could give and imbue a soul in a business. And
also connectivity to the insurance industry already exists.
Credibility, right? You can't raise money So I think there was a lot of things that made, and we've had the best relationship ever. And then Jonathan Rumer, who was the CFO at the beginning, he basically built the financial model coming from KPMG, and he built this really amazing financial model, which to this day is still unbelievable when I look back at it. And then we turned up at an investment office, Anthemis, who are a fintech fund in the UK, and we pitch YuLife, where we're like doing that scary pitch moment. And the guy calls Sammy after the meeting. And he goes, I'm quitting my job. I'm getting on a plane and I'm coming. And that guy
to
join YuLife. And we were like,
do we get money with this, or do we just get you?
Well, so obviously that was a conversation that was happening in the background, but I don't think it was the fact. Honestly, it was like, Sammy was like, okay, probably like believed it was a great opportunity and saw. And to be fair, he's now killing it. He's set up our South African office. We have a South African YuLife entity. It does a form of, it writes its own risk. So we don't have a full license. We've got like half a license. We work with something called a cell captive. And
it's like an MGA in a way.
Yeah,
right?
So kind of like an MGA, but you get to carry some risk, and it's pretty cool.
Yep.
And that business is growing well. He's getting onto that nice J curve. So
nice.
So as a five, we ended up coming together all with our different things, and then we raised £3 million from Local Globe, Our Crowd, and Anthemis.
So what is the tangible impact of gamification have on engagement? If you really have to, because if you've had to explain to a ton of different people, right? Because and Sam Thompson was saying this to you, if you pay people to do it, they'll always do it, but that's not necessarily true. And I love Sam, so I'm not arguing with him per se.
It's okay if you do.
Engagement.
So you hit just so Sam, you're on the line. We're arguing. No, we're definitely arguing with you, but he knows that. So that's cool.
But like, why does this work? Do you know what I mean? Because there are plenty of other stuff that is out there that's nominally gamified, but like, what's the science behind this? Is there behavioral science behind this? Like, what's going on here?
Okay, so I'd say it's a combination of science and art. And as all great things are, I would say 0 to 1, it's based on tacit knowledge and art. Tacit knowledge in that I played games for 20 years of obsessive gameplay. I've played at pretty much everything. And I like the RPG model, which is like role-playing games where you get given a character, that character goes on an adventure, the adventure allows it to find loot objects, it uses that objects to embellish and empower itself. Through empowerment, it can do more difficult things, and then ultimately it is its most powerful, most fulfilled self. And I've always liked that as a metaphor for, it's designed as a metaphor for life, right? We go through life, we pick things up, they do things for us, they make us more powerful. And especially with financial products, you go through life, you acquire financial products, and you are becoming more powerful as you grow. And I thought, as a model, that was going to be the next app I was going to build. It was going to be something that took an RPG mechanic and applied it to the real avatar. not the virtual avatar that you fall in love with, that you escape through, but this avatar, the real me.
The avatar that you actually are, right?
Yes.
In other words, the category of human into which you fit that gets avatarized, for lack of a better term, because you fit into some cohort, right? Like, it's weird that that word is the same for the fake character that sits in those RPG games. And avatar is actually a thing that is scientific and categorized around who you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that was clarity for me that I was going to YuLife was going to be an interface. So then after speaking to the guys, I had this vision of YuLife being this interface of living your best life. That was going to be our mission. That was going to be our truth. And then the question was, how do we live our best life? How am I going to tell people where to go? And RPGs do this really well. You know, you land in a world, you are told that inputs create positive reinforcement. So if I move my character forward, it goes, yay, well done. Here's some experience points. Now you level up. By doing the most simple things, it tells you, well done, well done, well done. And after you get a little bit of that, you then discover that if you do something a quest giver gives you, an activity type, well, then you get kind of like double the reward. And it may have been the same activity you were going to do anyway. So I walk to the door, and instead of walking to the door, I speak to a quest giver. They give me a quest. I take the quest. I then walk to the door. Now I've got 2 rewards, one for walking to the door, one because the quest giver told me to walk to the door, which begins and teaches me that actually quest givers are the ones who are defining my path. And yet I feel free. But if I want to accelerate my growth in this game, I need to do what the quest giver says. So these are some of the mechanics that I looked at, and I thought, okay, how could I apply this to real life? How could I say, so instead of having a joystick that moves forward, we have feet. And as we walk, we have a pedometer in our devices by default. So that can be the stick that moves forward. That can be our input. And then the question is, what's the thing the games do next? They say, well done. So my job is to say, as you input, well done, well done, well done, well done. And people become addicted to the well done. And then if I want people to do better, they'll go, oh, this is a nice feeling. Someone's saying well done for walking. I've never done that before. And the way we would do that is we created UCoin, our currency of well-being. And then we made that UCoin valuable by connecting it to brands people loved in the rewards we offered. But at its core, it was this loop of, I do a thing, I get told well done. Then the next level was about quests. So now we had to have a method where we could give you a quest that would say, do what we tell you to do. And then we're going to be even more well done. We're going to be even more rewarding.
So is the app the quest giver? That's what I was going to ask you. Who's the quest giver? Because there are 2 things for me here, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, please.
Is there an opportunity, right? Because the way the whole thing works at scale, right, is let's say you engage with a big company.
Yes.
Right. Company A, doesn't matter. Let's say they have 10,000 employees.
Yes.
Is there a way to have this like hybrid activity where the app itself or YuLife itself is a quest giver, but there's someone internally as well who takes on the role as quest giver so that that person then can incentivize other humans with whom they're interacting on a day-to-day basis anyway and says, hey, you know what, this weekend we should just go for a run together. And if we do that, then next week we all get to go see a movie or some such thing. So the quest giver is actually a person. Does that make sense?
So the quest giver, so yes is the answer. Companies can create events through our system, although we're quite tightly controlled on how they do that because it needs to feel authentic to the experience. But they can create events, and these events then populate on the home screen, and they are enhanced rewards for doing certain activities that are defined by the event. So yes, answer. The company can, be a quest giver. We try to focus on self-betterment as the key theme for any action that then achieves a reward.
Go ahead.
So now you're in this world where there are quest givers, and you ask me, is YuLife the quest giver? I think of it in 2 ways. I think of it as like glasses. I can't see very well. Everything's a bit mushed when I take my glasses off. Those with glasses will know that. But without glasses, I can't see. I kind of feel like we are augmented reality. We are glasses a little bit, but then we are also presenting the quest giver. So it's a combination of the two, that we're creating a lens to look at yourself through when you're just observing yourself in state. But at the same time, we then provide the quests that will then motivate you. And the quests, by the way, were never going to be in-app. It was all about driving you to the best well-being tools in the world. So all of the quests were going to take you to Sleep Cycle, to take you to Meditopia for meditation, take you to Fit for fitness, HIIT sessions and things like that. the idea was going to be we were going to leverage all this amazing technology that exists in the consumer ecosystem around health and well-being, and we were going to incentivize you to use those tools through our quests. And then through using those tools, you become healthier, happier, better version of yourself.
I want to ask you a question that I asked Sam Fromson a year ago, if you don't mind.
Please.
Because I'm curious about your opinion on this. And because we were talking about Japan before we started recording, I want to give you a little bit of context. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
So every year in Japan, they have this thing called the Ekiden.
Yes.
Right? And where they run literally from central Tokyo up to a lake in Hakone, and then they run back. And each one of these sections of the race is probably like 20 kilometers, and 5 guys do it or 6 guys do it. They run there and back. And the universities race against each other. So they spend all year training for this. And then they shut down the roads probably on New Year's Day or the day before New Year's, and then on New Year's Day, and they run back and forth to the lake and then back home. Right?
Yeah.
And whoever wins, and they get a prize. But they spend all year training for it. And I said to Sam, I think this was the first or maybe the second time we recorded with him, I was like, the stuff that you're doing sounds like it's intra-company. Right? So I'm inside company A, and I have this thing where I'm competing or doing events or quests with my people inside the company. But I said to him, could you have like a YuLife Olympics where at the end of every year, the companies that are in the YuLife ecosystem are going, you guys have been questing all year? So have we. Let's create an intercompany quest. And now it's like a thing, and you can do it globally. And you could do it every year or every 4 years. I don't care. But you know what I mean? Where now you get this massive engagement, because now it's not just you doing the quest with the people in accounting. It's you doing the quest with the people in accounting at company B. Do you know what I mean? So now it's like Goldman running, and the reason why I bring this up is because every year we did our own private Ekiden, and we had Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers and Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch. We trained all year. And then for no particular reason, just because it was fun, we did our own Ekiden back and forth. The runs were shorter. It was 5K, 10K, because we weren't as good as the college guys. But you know what I mean? We competed externally. So I was just thinking like what you think about that as a quest.
Yeah. So we've also run an Ekiden in the UK where we had all the different businesses working out in Japan and the UK come together to do one.
I love it.
I didn't participate as I have the speed of a slug. So I just didn't want to bring the team down. That would have been bad. In answer to the question, so we actually hold summer games every year in the app. And the summer games it's basically a really super rewarding program that gets added in addition to everything else. It's less about, can I beat someone? It's more around, can we all play together to achieve success in the summer games? It's a group effort, cooperative. In the past, I have a dashboard of all the companies and their levels, so they compete. And we do index businesses to understand who are the most healthy and the most performant. 2 challenges that come with that. One is the economic buyer, being a business, often struggles to see the virtue in competing with another business in the same way. So it's hard, from a fiscal, making money point of view, to get paid for that. It's quite challenging. We have been considering doing like an annual award ceremony and maybe an annual set of challenges for certain companies that wish to participate. The best example I've seen of company participation, though, is where you have a conglomerate. So we have a large company called Havas, a media business in the UK, awesome business. And they've got really into the idea of, okay, can we get different functions or different offices to interact with each other? And we held a bunch of events. And this has been quite successful for us, where into business, there is actually a lot of small businesses or business units, quite large businesses in the case of us, and we would get them to compete with each other. And that was really successful. So we have seen a bit of it, not to the extent you're describing. And I think what you're describing would be awesome, because it would be a great way to get competitive energy between businesses out there and in a playful way. But
just for fun,
it's quite challenging. Yeah, to monetize that is difficult, but I agree with you. I think it's that would be the nirvana for me, is where you can take communities of individuals and put them up against each other for a more player versus player experience. We do have a bit of player versus player mechanics, and as we come more into the game mechanics, I can explain the logic and the rationale of it. But that I do like the idea.
Can you do that? Because I'm super interested in this behavioral science thing, right? This idea that I do something well and I'm congratulated for it, good job, you did that. I want to do more, but there has to be something else happening here, right? Because at some point, just a pat on the back or a congratulatory phrase or something just ends up not being enough. Are there other sort of psychological things or behavioral things that go into the mechanics of this that maybe people wouldn't know necessarily, but you know because you're building this stuff? Is that fair?
So it's so interesting. Consulting and books, right, make a lot of money for making things very complicated. And one of the embarrassing things that I'm going into here, and just being honest with people, is that it's very complicated on a social dynamics level, but it's not very complicated on an implementation level. In practice, people only want very few things. So I'll give you a framework that I particularly like. For years, marketing people and tech people would come together and create user personas, and those user personas would then inform the decisions on what should be built. And I respect that as a path, just not my vibe. I didn't do it that way. I believe everybody everywhere is actually quite similar. Humans are human. I don't think people are wildly different. I think cultures can be different, which means humans might behave in a different way. But human instincts are not wildly different, at least in my experience. And I played with games with people from all over the world. It's not like I'm one guy playing a game in the UK. I play people from America, from China, from Russia, from all over Asia. Koreans. I play with everyone. So
what are the basics though? Like, what are the key things that everybody? Because I think I know, but you know way better than I do.
So what I was describing before were about the core loops, about how you say well done, and then how you say well done under a direction. And when we talk about behavior change, the behavior change comes when you give someone a direction and that they embrace the direction. The way I design the holistic experience, so the question isn't like, I can get pretty much anyone to do a small thing, but whether they'll keep doing it for the next 10 years is the challenge. So you start looking at something around how does a game sustain for 2 decades? That's the real question. It's not I can tell you now, oversimplification, extrinsic rewards, simple motivation techniques, I can get someone to do something for immediately. Whether I can get them to do it in 2 years that's where my next problem came. And in trying to answer that question, it was a lot more complicated because I then had to look at what games have lasted 20 years. What games have people logged on to every day for 20 years?
Yeah, and kept playing. So what was there?
Question.
Yeah, so what's the answer? So what are some of the answers?
I'm just moving my camera so you don't actually show this to anyone. That over there is my secret sauce. So you probably don't know what that is. That over there is an original server blade. Back in the day, before there was all these kind of cloud computing solutions, people used to build games on server blades. Think like a Minecraft server where you have a server, 40 people attend it, and that server then exists on the machine that it's been set up on. It doesn't exist in much more of a complicated way. It's basically one computer everyone's logging into. That server was for a game called World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft, actually, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, celebrated its 20th anniversary.
Even I know that, and I'm not a gamer.
Yeah. So I've been playing that game since I was about 12, 13 maybe.
Kind
And MMOs generally, massive multiplayer online games. And what I discovered in these games was that people lived their whole lives. There was actually it's kind of terrible, but there was a TV show that's just been, I think it's on Netflix, about this amazing kid that had a terrible disease. And he basically lived his whole life in World of Warcraft. And his parents only found out after he died that he'd had all these friends and gone on all these adventures playing computer games. And it was the most beautiful, it's a really good TV show. I think his name was Ibrahim. Amazing story. What World of Warcraft taught me is that it's possible to build a relationship that lasts for 20 years. Okay, so now I know my source. So the question is how? So I was reading this book one day. This was well before YuLife. I had gone to the V&A, Victoria and Albert Museum, and they were putting on a talk about computer games. And they had loads of books for sale at the end of the talk. So I bought one of the books. And I was really creative. I bought a book called Video Game Design by Michael Salmon. And I read this book, and it basically explains in idiot language how to build a game. And then I come across this one idea in this book. And it was a guy called Professor Bartle had invented, or at least he'd studied World of Warcraft, and he'd identified 4 key personas that exist in the game. And he had recognized that by the existence or the coexistence of these 4 personas, you could create a world that will persist for a very long period of time. And it's these 4 different character traits that we all have, but some of us identify more as. And these 4 traits are as follows. You have explorers, people who want to understand the mechanics of how something works, often such that they can break it. You know, when you've probably seen these YouTube videos of a guy jumping into a wall in a computer game 50 times, you probably flicked off it. But if you have seen those videos, he eventually makes it through the wall, and it's the best thing ever. He is elated. You know, when the guy that worked out that if you press back, forward, up, down on Mario, you get to the final boss or something like that. That is the explorer. Someone who wants to understand the mechanics of the universe that they're in, almost to break them. This is a gamer type. They have to feel like they're getting one up on the machine.
I love it.
Achievers. This is someone who feels deeply unfulfilled unless they maximize the moment. So unless I get 10 stars, if you say to me that I could get 100% in an exam and I don't get 100%, I am unfulfilled. The completionist, the desire to have got the most that was available. Achiever. Both of those 2 personas are quite introverted. It's about how I identify with my own experience of the world. And you know, there are a lot of people out there who are very introverted. You then have
like you get energy. You get energy from the stuff that happens to you. That's introversion. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Beautifully explained. So that's exactly what those 2 personas deliver. And then on the other side of the coin, you have the extroversions. And there's one I like, which is fellowship. So we seek fellowship with each other. We want to go on adventures together, to do wonderful things together, to feel like together we achieve amazing things. That togetherness. So I seek fellowship. Right next to the fellowship land is the type of persona that everyone feels dirty about. The killer. People who seek to dominate other people. It's a really horrible way of talking about something. Why would you create, especially in the workplace, YuLife predominantly sells to businesses, why would you create an environment where somebody can dominate someone else? That's not a nice feeling. But the reality is that personality type exists. So pretending it doesn't make it exist less. It just lets it act out in other ways. So creating a space where it's okay to be that person. It's okay to have a dominating aspect of your existence. It's all right. They want to win. When they're in a battle against someone, they want to win that moment. If they're doing a walking challenge today with another individual like me, they want to win. And not winning hits them like agony. Winning feels great. I don't really care. But that persona, love it. So now with these 4 different personas existing in one ecosystem altogether, you then have to ask yourself, what features do they need to feel fulfilled?
Wow. So once you have that, you can build little things for each one of those people. You can build like the explorer route. You can build the achiever route. You can build the fellowship searcher route. Like, in other words, I want to do this thing, but I don't want to do it alone. And actually, when we're doing it together, I want to make sure that you're having a great experience as well. That's extroversion. I get energy from you.
Yes.
And from the things that happen to you. And killer is just the reverse thing. It's like, I want to win, but I want to win, and I get joy when you lose.
Yeah.
But there are different pathways for each one of those people. And this is where it starts getting really interesting, because this is probably the core of this behavioral science, where if you because if you don't have one of them there, then you're going to lose the entire cohort of killers, but you still want those guys and gals to be healthy.
Because they all feed each other. They
also feed each other. Because
when they cheat, they feel more powerful.
Because without the killers, the achievers don't feel good, because the achiever wants to achieve in his own right. But when he sees the killer fail, in a way, he feels a little bit better. But this is also the way the real world works, right? So you're not creating avatars out of nowhere. You're just going, these are the main 4 kind of at scale, and we need things for each one of them. And do you have interplay between all of them as well?
Yes, they must coexist in the same space. And that's the real challenge. So often people will understand, this is not new news. It's not like I'm the inventor of any of this. People will often understand an element of this, but they won't understand how to tie it all together into one experience that's worthy of 20 years.
I love learning new things. I may read that book, actually.
Yeah, I've got to say, it's literally a paragraph in the book. He wrote a white paper. I met him in person. I think I maybe projected a lot of my own beliefs onto him because I got really excited when I saw this.
Maybe, but fair enough.
Yeah.
But actually, this is the best kind of explanation I've had of why gamification works, but also why it persists, right? Because I mean, I asked you earlier, right? Like everything's kind of gamified, but unless you understand, like at the core, that these avatars, again, to use the word you used earlier, exist, and that you need to have things for them all, and then they need to interplay with each other. Otherwise, you don't have this vibrant ecosystem that's going to persist for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you said it nicer. And, in life, you find yourself having moments where you've got an edge on the world. This was my edge. Working this out gave me my edge. I could have applied this to any industry, but I was lucky that I met these two guys in that cafe, and they said to me, insurance is a good deed. Let's do the good deed, and at the same time make it worthy of everyone's subscription payments that they're making to their insurance. So that suddenly this thing that goes out of your account every month gives you pleasure every day.
Do you see this being used in other verticals to the same extent? Or do you see kind of gaps in the gamification? And I'm not taking anything away from anybody else.
No.
But this is a very specific and very nuanced description of the way gamification works, which I did not know before we had this conversation. Do you have experiences where like you're looking at other kind of gamified, I'm putting in quotes, apps or experiences, and you're like, you're missing the whole killer, and without that guy, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, such a good question.
You're missing an aspect of this that's going to take away the engagement over time.
So there are some people doing it really well. So Duolingo does an incredible job of fulfilling different experiences. So if you think you have the competition, you think you have the individual mastery, you've got the ability to participate and explore, it's got a lot of depth because of the language, has a lot of history and narrative. It leverages the magic of a language, which in itself is a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
To be able to master, that gives it depth. So there's loads of, I think they did a very good job. I think they over-indexed on like one particular area because I would have loved to see that model applied to more. I don't think many people get it. What I've just described to you, what you've just understood, there is a massive gap between those that understand and those that don't. And I'd say 99% of those building apps don't understand.
So can I ask you this as well? And this is a little bit of a nuanced thing. And again, it requires a little bit of framing. When I was living and working in Japan and working in the stock market, every company that's listed has a code. I think 6758 is Sony and 7203 is Toyota. And I used to go on runs with one of my colleagues. And every time we'd run around the city, we'd be like, that's 7203, that's 6758, that's 7206 or whatever it was. 7267 was Honda, like all these things. I don't remember exactly. But we felt we could never get away from like the numbers that just kept flashing in our heads without thinking about it. So I guess my question to you is, as you go through your day-to-day life, since you spent so much time thinking about this and designing this experience in a way to make it persistent and to make it last longer, do you look at other experiences that you have, like at a restaurant or at a theater or at a ball game, and you just think, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. That's actually kind of brilliant. Or I see what you did there, but it didn't live up to what could have possibly been done. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I totally get that. And I totally agree. So everywhere, I'm a nightmare. I can't go somewhere and not obsess over anyone that makes something, I'm like a bloody critic of. It's a nightmare for anyone that's with me. And I'm critiquing everything. And by the way, I've just explained some of the mechanics. There's mountains more that like...
I'm sure.
The power of lore and storytelling that sits behind the game mechanics combined is a massive effect on whether the game can sustain. Things like that are huge. But yes, in answer to your question, I obsess over everything, and I will specifically obsess through this lens.
I don't think I can look at the world in the same way ever again. Can you tell me one more thing? Like you just said this thing about law. Can you just explain that to me? And then it's already turned my world upside down. Maybe this one will do as well.
Okay, so you'll apply the mechanics. So let's imagine you tomorrow go out and build an application, taking some of the things that we've talked about today and really embedding them in your thoughts.
Yep.
Using this knowledge and applying it. You'll come to a point when there is an immediate problem, which is you build something and it's missing a soul. And this is one of the things that I find really interesting in Japan around objects and souls. And me coming from a monotheistic religion versus a polytheistic religion, the idea, or not even a polytheistic, a idol worshipping religion, it's very difficult to imbue a soul in an object. And yet, some experiences, when we have them, we're like, this object has soul. Funnily enough, in Japan specifically, you pick up any object in Japan, I don't know how, I don't know why, anything that is manufactured, there's almost like there is a soul imbued in it through design, through manufacturing prowess, not sure, but it's pretty intense. One of the things that I noticed in this very first version of the application we made that followed all the rules was something was missing. The app, even though we'd done all this stuff, was missing a soul. Right. Now, I'm really good at game mechanics. I'm not that interested in fantasy story writing. Doesn't do it for me so well. Just doesn't, not my magic.
Okay.
So I had this problem where the app was missing a soul. So I go to Sammy Rubin, our CEO. And Sammy is really into wellness, also into Kabbalah, which is like a deeper spiritual mysticism. And this idea of self-actualization, he's really integrated it, and he's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of good storytelling abilities. And he created a fantasy world based on these ideas, where there was a forest, an ocean, a desert, and a mountain through 4 layers of self-actualization. He understood that actually we want to have different animals representing different values, and then we need to keep those animals consistent. And we can only have a certain number of animals and values that we wish to portray. Like, he added a law to the mechanics. And we sat there and we it took us months, literally months. And the app went from an abstract design into the creative brand you see today through adding the law to the product. Like, I'll give you an example. A great game has great mechanics, and the story doesn't have to be amazing if the mechanics are amazing. But if the story is really good, that's why often people who make movies often make bad games. They might have an amazing story, but the game sucks because the mechanics are off.
Right.
But sometimes you get both. So Spider-Man 2 was released on PlayStation. It was a great game. They had both a great story, great mechanics, came together, became a cult. And that is the opportunity when you take great behavioral science, if that's what we want to call it, mechanics, and you apply great law, you now have a universe. And you look at things like a hero's journey, and they become your inspiration for what am I trying to take my avatar on? What's the quest that we're going on, the macro journey?
So we spent a lot of time talking about these avatars, right? But what drives what's the source of these laws? Like, how do you know if the law is going to make the mechanics of this work, or is it just test and test and test?
So the mechanics will work anyway. It's not like I'm inventing the mechanics. I'm just applying the best mechanics I've ever experienced into the app at different stages. Like in the app right now, we have this thing. We have this. I'll give you a feature that we just built. You can donate or impact planting trees. There's then a leaderboard so that you can see your peers at work who else has impacted planting trees. There's a lot going on in that in itself. You then can see how many together you've planted. As you plant trees, you progress through a battle pass. So if you've ever seen Fortnite have this thing where the more you play, the more this bar increases. And as this bar increases, you get a reward. And then it increases again, you get another reward. We basically did the same thing. So I'm not inventing any mechanic. I am just taking the best mechanics in the world and applying it with context switching. So in answer to the original question, does the law have a meaningful effect? I would say the law doesn't need to be amazing. It just happens that Sammy did an amazing job. But the law doesn't need to be amazing. The mechanics are ultimately more important. But without the law, you can't love it. You can like it, but you can't have that emotional connection.
Right. But it also means you're taking mechanics from like real life and putting them into a place where taking these mechanics that have already had impact. Like this tree planting thing is something they used to do at my synagogue when I was like 5 years old. So it's like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And they would, back then there was no electronics, but they would post something up on the board, like a little sticker, and just go, you planted a tree, he planted a tree, she planted two. And you'd look up at the leaderboard or whatever it was and just go, I need to plant more trees.
Yes.
Kind of thing. right?
Exactly.
So you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. You're just applying it to places where it hasn't been applied before necessarily, and saying, no one thought to do this in the insurance world or in the wellness world. And through wellness into insurance, then you can create this really great experience, which probably exemplifies what YuLife is. Is that fair?
Precisely.
Wow. Okay, maybe we end there. That was so amazing. Will you come back? Because I really want to talk more about this. But if there's more mechanics and more stuff on the behavioral science side, we've been at this for like 50 minutes.
Yeah. It goes on, honestly, man, it goes on forever. Like, how many failed badge solutions have you seen that are just
thousands.
Pointless? Right. So I could show you some of the UX
for no reason though.
Badges.
But can I just interrupt you? I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but can I tell you this? So I wear this Apple Watch. I don't know if the camera can see it, and it measures 3 things at scale, right? Like how much you move every day, how much you exercise every day, and then how much you stand every day. These are the 3 things they give you. If you have an Apple Watch, you know that when you achieve those 3 things, it does this unbelievable animation.
Yeah.
And during the day, I'm just like, whoa. And I check every day, like how many of those rings I've closed. I haven't worn a watch for literally like 50 years, and now I'm wearing this thing and I can't take it off. When I don't wear it, I feel naked. So they got me.
You said something to me, by the way, at the beginning, which was interesting, but you've just actually made my point, which was,
tell me.
You said to me, it can't be that simple. But you've got a thing where you're doing all the work, all of the input, and it's telling you, good boy. And you're going, oh, thank you. Thank you.
I know, I'm corroborating you.
Yeah, and now you can't take it off. People are very simple creatures. You just need to know how to press the right button.
Josh Hart, the co-founder, Chief Product and Technology Officer at YuLife. That was awesome. I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.